Hello, everybody, and welcome back to First Ring Daily, where we are back home for approximately 24 hours because next week we won't be at home. How's it going, Paul?
It's nice to be home briefly.
Yeah, it's good
I
that the
miss my
place you
family.
pay a
Some of them.
mortgage, stay in that place. It's a novel idea. It's a
Yeah.
very, very, very novel idea, Paul. Is that mug from 1984?
Yeah. So this is, I don't remember what it was called, but what's missing from this is the logo that's been wiped off over the years. This is a Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee mug from the 1980s. But it used to have a thing on it that said the name of whatever the drink was that was new at the time. That was an iced coffee, really. It was but the size, like the big gulp of Dunkin' Donuts from the 1980s. Oh, by the way, this bottom part has separated from this at least 3 times, and I keep repairing it with super glue because this thing is a national treasure.
I have many thoughts. One,
I assume most of them are negative.
you're not wrong. The first thought was that when I said from the 1980s, I was completely making that up. And in fact,
And
it is from the 1980s.
oh yes,
I'm not sure what the half life of plastic atoms are, but I'm sure that
well,
whatever you're drinking out of there is infused with plastic goodness at this point.
I like the taste of plastic. Plus, my memory's going. Who are you?
Exactly. Yeah. Good. Third is the color scheme. Is that a brown top?
Yeah. Yep. Brown and tan, I guess. I don't know. Why? Who knows? Because coffee, I guess. I don't know.
It's impressive that you've
I
kept
wish
it.
I could remember the name of the. I think it was related to the size of the drink, which today we would describe as small. But at the time, I think this was like the new. They didn't call it Big Gulp. Maybe someone from the Northeast would know the answer to this, but it was a Dunkin' Donuts new iced coffee, large sized. You used to be able to order. People actually still do this. They walk into Dunkin' Donuts and order a, whatever the name of that thing is. It's not been on the menu for 20 years.
Yeah, because diabetes became a thing.
Well, no, it's just iced coffee, right? You could get this without sugar. It's just coffee. It's, coffee as Americans know coffee.
The other thing, since I've made fun of you enough, I think it's time to make fun of me. Right before the show started, Paul said, "Hey, you're wearing your Build Blue shirt." There were actually two incorrect things that you speculated there, Paul. One, the shirt is more purple.
I think. Oh, I thought I said purple, but okay.
Whatever. Two,
Yep.
this might be my wife's.
Yeah. It's tight in all the right places.
Yeah,
It's,
it was in my
it's
drawer.
nice.
I threw it on because I did my podcast this morning. I went out, cut the grass, and then I needed to change clothes, so I came back in, and this was in my drawer, and I just threw it on, and then grabbed the laptop and walked downstairs, and I was like,
You like the fit's a little.
yeah,
It's a little
it's a little
constraining.
thin in the sides. Like I don't mind.
But
Like,
see, you can actually wear that. See, if I could probably slap one of my wife's shirts over my arm, and have a little bit of wiggle room there. But I mean, I would destroy clothing of hers if I ever tried to wear it.
well, see, that is the third, in fact, problem. Is I suspect that I have actually
You've
destroyed
ruined it.
this
Yeah.
putting it on because it's, like you said, snug in all the right places. The problem is that my snug is a little bit bigger than
Does
her
it
snug.
Is it kind of like a bare midriff kind of a thing?
little-
Like if you stood up with like we see your belly button or whatever.
No, I don't know.
No?
I'm very confused at whose shirt this is because that's why I didn't think it was mine or hers because I'm like, it's
man.
kind of the right length.
Sure.
I don't know, Paul. It's been a confusing week, and we're just gonna
Sure.
end. Yep.
Sure.
Speaking of confusing things, Paul, here, let's just move on because I don't think I can dig myself into any deeper of a hole at this point.
Oh, I could. You want to dig it a little deeper? You want to do a little digging? Got back to my room on Tuesday night, I guess. There's a note from Brad on my bed.
Yeah, you did find it.
I took a picture of it, and then I thought to myself, if I post this online, I'm never going to hear the end of it. So I will just reveal that to the limited audience of this podcast.
I'll reveal the
Will
whole
that
thing.
posted online?
Yeah, so what typically happens is that one of us will have, in this particular scenario, which we'll talk about more next week, Paul was leaving a day later than I was, and I was leaving that evening, and so it doesn't make sense to keep a hotel room, and I'm leaving that evening. So I take my stuff and I put it in his room.
Right.
And as I was getting ready to leave, Paul was still at the meetup because I had to leave that early, and I was like, you know what? I was going to put my badge in the bed, but what I did was I wrote a little handwritten thing in my scribble.
Yes.
I wrote Brad was here, and I just
Yes.
nestled it into the pillows. Just nestled it.
There's there's the awkwardness of walking with Brad to the front of the hotel to ask for an additional key to my room because, I got this going on back here. And then, there are also days where you and I are actually traveling at the same time. So this particular trip, I was leaving the next morning, so it made sense for me to have a room. But I will often, like we're doing this in Chicago, I'm leaving on Thursday, but late on Thursday. So I have a room for Thursday, and we'll probably do the same thing. Like it's nice to have a place to crash because you have to check out in the morning, and then you have this whole day where you're kind of homeless. So being able to leave bags somewhere and not worry about them, and if you can, I don't think I'm going to be able to, but oftentimes like go take a nap or something. It just makes for a more enjoyable trip.
It really does. And this is not in the show notes. We haven't even gotten to the show notes yet.
So
Paul will remember this fondly because I think it was Dina Bass, who we see at everything because she covers Microsoft for Bloomberg. We were sitting around a table, and for some reason, everyone thinks that when we travel, we share a room, and we absolutely do not because it's not happening.
Because like we wear little stocking caps to bed and tell each other stories.
And so, like, we're talking through some of this stuff, and then Dina's like, "Oh, I just assumed you guys were in the same room because, you never know what happens." And we're like, "No, we're not in the same room." And she's like, "Oh, that makes sense." And then Paul and I both at the same time came back and be like, "What? We couldn't be gay? Like, is that too much?"
Yeah, was that a problem? Well, yeah, both of us are married and have children, but look, no one wants to be in the same room with a 50-year-old white guy. Like, I snore like a machine. So nobody wants any part of that.
Yeah, I figured we couldn't.
I don't want any part of that.
I figured we couldn't take the show any lower, but I think we have done that. So let's just move on to build. Okay. So obviously a lot. That's still Paul drinking out of an old mug. A lot has gone on since build has happened. We've written about it to death. We've talked about it various places at different times. Paul, there were just a couple things I wanted to bring up because the first one here didn't get much attention. But I think it's actually really significant. It plays actually into Microsoft's PWA strategy. When Starbucks was up on stage, they said that nearly half of their orders are now coming from the web, not just mobile. I would have assumed that mobile would have been like 90% of their orders, but it sounds like they're getting a lot of traction.
A lot of it's mobile web, actually, right? Because isn't their client a PWA?
Yeah, but I would assume that people are people using PWA on their phone?
I don't think they even know they're using it. Well, I suppose if you went to the App Store now, you would get the app, not the PWA. So yeah, that's a good point. But if you go to the website, you'll see you can install it to your home screen, et cetera. Yeah. It's a PWA.
But to me, it just seemed I was shocked, and I'm thinking, well, if Starbucks is up there promoting PWAs, that they're having good traction with it, we can only hope that it's going to, propagate out through the network. Unlike the NBA's demo up on stage, which is about as awkward as Satya Nadella talking about Apple stock price, which also happened.
Oh, yeah. There were a lot of moments I wish we could take back from that keynote.
Yeah. And then the only, this was still awkward to me, was the Cortana on stage with the Amazon stuff. That was really the only dedicated new feature that they announced. Then they just kind of drizzled Cortana and other auxiliary places, but never really talked about it, which was...
So if you haven't, you should read Mary Jo's interview with Justin Silvato. I forget the name right, but the guy who now runs Cortana.
Yep.
And the way he describes it to her is they're treating Cortana, in my words, more like they're treating Windows 10, which is a part of something else, right? In this case, it's a part of many something else's. And the Cortana references throughout the keynote kind of reflected that. It doesn't mean that they're not going to continue pushing it as a standalone assistant, of course, but I think the primary focus of Cortana moving forward is that it's going to be a component of other things. And you and I keep referencing this now, but you and I over a year ago spoke with, I think it was Ryan Gavin.
Yes. Yep.
about Cortana, and they had some kind of vision or strategy or whatever it was. I think at this point they pretty much stepped back from that and said, look, we should have moved more aggressively with the smart speaker thing. We didn't do that. We kind of feel like that's over. I think it is over. They don't really have much of a presence on phones, although people use Cortana on PCs. We'll see some benefit of that integration. I guess the big change for me is that I think at one point viewed this as potentially the next wave. And what it is part of the next wave. And I still think Microsoft has a good chance with what is really the next wave, which is ambient computing, or what are the other terms for this? Intelligent cloud, intelligent edge is kind of Microsoft's thing, although they called it ubiquitous computing.
They just had to put their own term in there, didn't they?
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good word.
I'm not saying it's bad, but they could have just gone with the popular agenda. But then,
sure.
Yep.
There it is. Oh, dude, somebody posted a photo of my mug, and sure enough, as I said, it was the name of the big drink at the time, and that name was Giant. It was a giant coffee. So in other words, it was the thing that was bigger than the large, which again, I will note, today would be maybe a medium at best, but that's amazing. That's it.
That thing is so bright that when your camera autofocuses on it, everything else goes dim in the background.
That's funny. Does that really? I didn't even look at it. I like how it does the. Yeah, look at that. It's probably radioactive.
And it adds flavor to the.
John Ellsworth, by the way, is the guy. Thank you, John, for finding that. That's beautiful.
I mean, this is real-time research, folks.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yep. Other things going on this week was Google I/O, which obviously we have written about extensively here, but I actually watched it again last night because I needed to fall asleep, and
yep,
should have put on Microsoft day one. Actually, now that I think about it, but the impressions that I get is that Google's AI is eating the world.
Yeah,
and that's about it. I mean, there's a lot. That's not everything they talk about, obviously, but their AI is on another level.
2 points to what you just said. One is if you had actually put on the Microsoft keynote, it would have been on when you woke up as well, and that's no good. To be fair, a lot of people have asked me to compare these two keynotes, like which one's better, better, whatever better means. They're different kinds of events. There were similarities, right? They both talked a lot about AI and fixing the world and being the trusted partner, which is kind of ironic given the backgrounds of these two companies. I would say today Microsoft is absolutely the more trustworthy of the two. But as I think what you were alluding to with your AI is eating the world thing, Google has such an entry into our lives now through mobile and the web, the primary platforms we all use. They're just uniquely situated to take advantage of that. That's the issue with Cortana, that Microsoft can't do that. To be fair, because I've complained a lot about the Microsoft keynotes, because I cover Microsoft primarily. I always have, and it's still my focus. Although, by virtue of the fact that the world is changing, you kind of have to start paying attention to other things too. Google's keynote had its down moments as well, for sure, and it's just that they were able to do it in an hour and 45 minutes, whereas Microsoft required over 5 hours over 2 days, 3 hours and 40 minutes on the first day.
Right.
To kind of communicate stuff. And Microsoft's keynote had more stuff for developers. And it's a developer show. That sounds like it should be obvious, but Google, like Apple, treats their keynote like a marketing event. And so they come out, they talk numbers, less numbers than in past years, but milestone user base, and then new features to consumer products. And so it's just, the shiny new thing is always more exciting than the bland cloud, blah, 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 whatever. 1100th Azure service. It's just the direction these companies are going.
Yeah, the one thing I think that's worth pointing out, I'll see if you agree with this statement. Google is very good at showing what the end product is. Microsoft's very good at showing you how you build the product.
Yeah. Google also, look, they both do this kind of future vision thing. Microsoft has done this on and off over the years. They used to use a CES keynote as a place to show their vision for the future. It wasn't like, here's what we're doing this year. It was like future. And it's interesting that Microsoft felt the need to have a podium for that kind of a communicate. But there were a little bit of things like that in this keynote. Obviously, anytime you talk about AI, and I know a lot of the programmers in the audience because we talk to guys there, and they're probably looking at each other like, "What is this stuff?" Like, I'm not going to put AI into a machine learning in my line of business app or whatever. I'm maintaining this, and then I'm retiring. There's some futuristic stuff going on there. But then Google pulls out this thing where their assistant calls a restaurant or whatever it was, and has a conversation where they and they add little human bits to it, and it's that perfect Google-ness, like of unbelievable futuristic science fiction-y awesomeness, engineering, and creepiness. Where it just kind of, as far as I'm concerned, and I think a lot of people would agree with this if they saw both, that was what won the day, right? It was incredible. This thing is not coming in June or July or anytime soon, probably. They were very honest about that, a message Microsoft finally got. But it shows you where they're going. And I think it provides a little bit of confidence for the people who have chosen that platform for, an assistant or whatever it might be, smart speakers, that this thing has legs. Like, this is, it's serious.
Yeah. The interesting thing, and I'm no legal person or whatever, is the actual legal ramifications of having a bot calling. Because somebody said, imagine if somebody created a bot network of all this Google stuff, just spamming out calls. It's like, and then does the bot have to identify itself as a bot when it calls somebody? The thing that I would love to know is that clearly Google showed off the time it went well, and that was maybe the 17th time that a bot called someplace. I would love to see like maybe the first or second try of when a bot was calling and it just ends in disaster.
I mean, they showed a second example where they couldn't make a reservation, but the bot handled it. So it did. I guess technically that went well as well. But yeah, of course, we've all given our assistants, or I've gotten 3 phone calls during this podcast, by the way.
All bots.
We've all had that experience where you do something kind of simple and it doesn't work. And this thing that they're showing is very complicated, right? I feel like there are these steps you take. You say the name of the assistant, pause, and then you give a command and it gives you an answer. That's step 1. And then you can have these conversations. And Cortana has done this for a long time. Google showed off kind of a next generation version of it. The idea being that you only have to say the code word one time, and now you're now you're having that conversation. So everything you do after that until the logical break is you guys having a conversation. The thing they just showed is like step 27. So I suspect there's going to be steps in between. And I also I think I didn't read the article, but I thought I saw a mention of what you were describing, the legal ramification. And I believe Google said that they would make it so that this thing has to announce itself. I am a digital assistant calling on behalf of username.
Yeah. And that will be because it's the exact opposite of the things when you call like Delta or whatever, and then you get that automated prompt. It's like, just say your command that we all hate. But it's,
Don't you love just turning the tables? I had a really crappy interaction with JetBlue. Actually, you'll appreciate this because it was for that Hawaiian Air flight that we took out to Hawaii in December. Hawaiian Air is a partner with JetBlue. That was many miles. I thought I should get some credit for this. I guess I could start an account over at Hawaiian Air, but I'm probably not going to Hawaii 3 times a year anytime soon. So I'll get a reduced number of points, but I can get them on JetBlue, which I can actually use. So I looked it up. I looked up how that works. They have different classes of tickets. These ones qualify. I checked it against the ticket. Yep, I have the tickets. They qualify. They're Class K. I submitted them all. And then weeks went by. I didn't hear anything. So I wrote JetBlue's customer service. I explained the situation. I said, this is what I did. I've never heard back. I want to make sure you got the email or whatever. And the guy wrote me back and he said, yeah, your tickets don't qualify. And we don't ever write back. And I was like, okay. I said, well, my tickets do qualify. And here they are. I sent it to him. And then he wrote back and he said, no, your tickets are Class Z. Only these types of tickets qualify. Here's the page that I already went to that I knew about. And I said, I'm sorry, but you can see very clear. If you actually looked at the images I sent you, you can see very clearly that they're Class K and they do qualify. And I don't understand why you wouldn't contact a customer who had contacted you specifically with a request. It got kind of nasty after a while.
Sure.
So the guy finally said, look, I will send them back and we'll go over it again and blah, blah, blah. And so silently, I was credited with about 5,000 points, which, in the scope of the 200,000 or whatever I have in JetBlue was not that much. And it was like one half of what they really were, what it would have been worth on JetBlue. But it was kind of a crappy interaction. I guess my point is, other than JetBlue can go F itself right now because I'm really upset about this, but and I just wanted to say that publicly, this is the type of thing I would like to have a digital AI thing working on my behalf. Like and it's a complex conversation, right? Because it's, the guy, he's describing on their end an automated process that has determined that my ticket class was Z, but I have the tickets. I have them. You can see it. It says literally class : K on each of the tickets. And it's when you have two people talking about it, because by nature, I'm like on the wrong end of a customer service question. I'm getting madder and madder as this goes on because they let it drag on for weeks. They never contacted me. Apparently that's some kind of policy. It's like, no, we don't give you anything, so we don't contact you. This would be way better handled by two AIs. You know what I mean? Like there would be no hard feelings. I'd like to think it would happen quickly, whatever. Or they could follow up on it, right? Like I had to remind myself, like I would go in and look for my points. Like, how come I'm not getting any points from this? And so eventually, it was probably 2 weeks or more. I finally, like I did what I did, but it'd be nice. I'd like to have this AI overlord thing going on. It'd be good working on my behalf.
Yeah. I look forward to the day where it's saying, I'll have your bot call my bot.
And, keep them busy.
Yep. And keep them busy. A question came in. I didn't do any digging around in the comments this week to find the good ones, mostly because time is an issue. And that's the longest part, whatever. But somebody did pose the question to us, Paul. It says, why do you, meaning me, Paul and Mary Jo, go to Build?
Why?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep. And then he goes on to ask, because Google I.O. had a lot more interesting stuff, blah, blah, blah.
Oh.
But
okay, so for whatever it's worth, I would like to go to Google I.O. I'd like to go to Apple WWDC. I go to Microsoft Build because they usually generate news at this event. I think it's fair to point out to people that they did provide us with all of the news in advance, and they did the same thing last year. Actually, they did the year before too, but it was in person as we arrived. They've kind of evolved how that works. So given that you can watch these things live on the internet, and assuming that they never break any real news during the event that we didn't know about in advance, you could make a nice case for staying home. I guess it would save some money for sure. I like the networking aspect of this. And that takes several forms. Like, we get to see the people who do the things that we do for other publications, like Rich and Richard and Peter Bright and Tom Warren and Mary Jo and everyone else. Like it's always nice. It's kind of like a little family reunion thing. We all get along great, and we all screw around in the press room. It's a good time. But it's also the Microsoft guys too, right? Like I ran down to the floor and I went to go see one of the guys I had talked to back in October about PWAs. I told him I would come back the next day, which I did. He was out doing a session or something, and so I left him a note on the whiteboard, and I'll talk to him later. But you run into people from Microsoft. It's super valuable. It's amazing how much can happen just talking to people, and then sometimes they do, they break news. It's helpful to be there to be able to, because it didn't happen this year, and I think it had to do with Google I/O. But they'll break some news in the keynote, and then afterwards you go get to talk to those people, right? And if you were home, that might not really happen, or it might happen later because they're all busy at Build. And then what was the second part?
I think that was really it. It's just, why do you go?
Yeah, I mean, I look. The other side thing here, and this is an issue for sure. As Microsoft focuses more on the cloud and AI and machine learning, that is further afield from my interests personally and to the aim of the site that I write for, right? I cover client technologies. I always have. I came up in the world writing about Windows primarily and then Microsoft more generally. And there's the stuff that they're doing now is kind of off. It's, it's weird. And people saw this, I'm sure. The Microsoft kind of demoted Windows 10 to being part of Microsoft 365. I find that connection to be tenuous at best. They showed off a handful of new features. I do like the aim of it. I think what Microsoft is doing is smart as a company. I wrote about those things. But for me personally, yeah, it's not necessarily in my wheelhouse, right? Last year I had the awkward situation. I met with the quantum computing guys. I still to this day have no idea what they're talking about. It's way over my head. I'm just not that smart. I'm certainly not smart in that way.
Right.
I have a deep background with Windows and a lot of experience there. I won't call it expertise, but I have put in the years, for sure. And I care about that stuff a lot. And yeah, whatever complaining I may do is coming from a place of that sense of history and respect for the product and for the people who use it. And it's hard to watch that stuff get trampled on and left behind. Does that make sense?
Do you need maybe a cuddle pony?
I do. I liked the pony.
Yeah.
The pony was enjoyable. I think things that are mini versions of other things are often very enjoyable. For some reason, I think that's why we like kids. It's like, oh, look, it's a little me. I love it. It's like why we protect them.
Yeah. Yeah. And along the lines of little ponies and dogs and all that stuff, if you haven't checked it out yet, up on the site is our behind the scenes video, which is getting 10 out of 10 stars by the critics. I think the biggest complaint so far is that it's not long enough, realizing that we actually do have jobs and things to do, and this is auxiliary to that. Paul and I both long for the day that a full production crew just starts following us around, because there's a lot of things that get missed because you have to understand that we're literally walking like this for hours at a time to make 7 minutes.
You should say. I mean, you're the one holding the thing. Oh, yeah, you must have like one arm is like a Popeye arm because it's the one you use to.
Maybe that's why the shirt's so tight.
Hold the camera. Yeah. It's kind of tough because we've made some videos that I think are hilarious, and obviously I would think that because we made them, but it puts a little bit of pressure on us too, because we have to kind of one up ourselves each time we go away, and it's hard. And now of course we're going back to back, and some guy on Twitter was asking, please tell me you're going to do one of these in Chicago too. And it's like, I'm sure we will try to do something, maybe, I don't know, but we literally have no free time in Chicago. It's hard to explain, but we're meeting with people. I'm going to have a hard time just writing for the site next week. It's going to be very difficult. So I get it. This one was cool though. I will say, you have these moments where we're doing these videos where you do something that's kind of fun and you think like, this is excellent. And, when Raphael, who wrote the script for that eulogy or whatever for the Windows Phone thing, he was going back and forth with me, and he was so committed to this. He got like a priest outfit, and he did an amazing job. Amazing. And he almost raised the bar too high for us because we just are goofy, impromptu idiots. We don't really plot anything out in advance per se usually. And this one, it was almost like an acted kind of scripted thing. It totally worked, in my opinion. I realize it's not up to the level of like, Seinfeld or whatever, but I thought it was amazing. And now that makes the next one really difficult.
Right.
Because we have to do something again.
What we're trying to say is, I'm sure we're going to do one in Chicago. The problem is it's going to suck. I mean, in comparison, it's going to be unscripted, just like this thing we planned out 4 days in advance that this is when we're going to do it. Here's the time. And Chicago,
it's going to have to be. We're not going to be running amok in Chicago. Like we don't really have
time.
Right? We'll do something. I'm sure. Like I said, I'm sure we'll do something. If only to get the hell out of the stupid meetings that we have to do. Just to be like, look, we got to make this video. We do this.
Yeah. It's what the people want.
Yes.
So yeah, anyways, we will be in Chicago next week. We are going to do a small casual meetup. We don't exactly know the location, but we do know the time and place. It's going to be roughly 7 to 7:30 p.m. on Tuesday. It is definitely happening Tuesday. It's going to be at a bar near the McCormick Center. There's one on the internet that looks quite good. It's called the Arc Bar, and I suspect that's where we might be, but we will update. We'll put a post out Monday. The only reason I'm not saying definitively it's there is because I'd actually like to go poke my head in the door and be like, okay, can 10 people stand here? Or is it like a disco bar? And you have, you know what I mean.
I hope it's a disco bar.
Fun
it would
thing,
go with
Paul,
my mug.
While we were gone traveling, somebody gifted my daughter a flute, who I now need to figure out who this was so I can kill them. Because guess how I woke up this morning at a bright-eyed 6:45 in the morning.
I I didn't have the experience you had getting home, but I find travel to be very tiring, and I like you did. I slept for 3 hours the day I arrived home, and then this morning I had this moment this morning where I was literally thinking it's impossible to oversleep in the summer because it's so bright out. Like the room was just like the center of the sun.
Yeah.
And then my wife was pushing me on the shoulder. She goes, "You gonna get up? It's like 8:15." Like 8:15. I usually get up at like 6:30. Like I was like, really? Like that's just I'm usually working by 8. Not good.
Yep.
No flute though.
Yeah. And as you can imagine, a 4-year-old just plays the most beautiful songs at that hour.
Yeah, no, I'm sure she's naturally talented in that way, unlike every other kid on earth.
Yeah, I think she played a high C for 48 minutes straight.
Yep.
So, you got anything else for today, Paul?
No. No. Sorry. How about you?
Nope.
Excellent. All right. See you in Chicago.
Yep. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.